And so then I'm reading it and it says Tokyo, Japan, and I like honestly couldn't believe it at first. The rest of my family couldn't believe it either because they all knew I also wanted to go to Japan. They're like, "Don't get your hopes up." But
Yeah.
just when I read it, it was like this is exactly where God needs me to be.
Welcome to Pebbles of Light, where we highlight the everyday people who bring hope, comfort, and light to others. I'm your host, Ann Maxon, sharing meaningful stories to help you find light in your journey. If the messages shared resonate with you, please follow, share, or support the podcast through Patreon to help keep the mic on and spread the light even farther. In the last episode, we reflected on what true success looks like. The episode's pebble was to take 5 minutes this week and redefine success for yourself, to consider what truly matters, not what impresses, but what endures, and write down that definition. Today, we continue that journey as my friend Mason Orr shares about his experience serving as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Japan. He shares how his experience revealed how God shapes us when we're willing to be shaped. Enjoy the show. Hello, I am so excited for this interview today. I'm joined by Mason Orr. Mason has a contagious smile and optimism, and he recently returned from Japan after spending 2 years serving as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. While he was away, he sent weekly or mostly weekly emails, and our whole family really enjoyed hearing about his experiences and what he was learning, both culturally as well as spiritually. And I thought it would be really great to have him on the podcast so that he can share a little bit more. Mason, please take a moment to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Mason. I just got back from Japan, and so I got to learn Japanese and learn about the culture. I love soccer, drawing, like any kind of art. Dama, and who knows what that is. It's like a Japanese toy. Yeah, and I'm super excited to be here today.
Awesome. Thank you. I know I've seen some of your drawings. Your mom has shared them on social media, and they're like the Mandalorian one is so cool.
Yes, yeah, I've got this propped up right here with the Mandalorian right now, so yeah, I love that one.
Very cool. And then kind of cool connection. I was talking to my mission leaders that I had 20 years ago last night, and their daughter just got back from the Sapporo mission in Japan. So not too
Wow.
long ago. Yeah. So it's kind of a fun little Japanese connection on all the
Yeah,
things.
they call it the frozen chosen up there. It
Oh,
snows
really?
so much. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. We'll jump into Japan in a minute, but for those who are unaware, I wanted to share a little bit about what these mission calls look like. So a lot of times people, for me anyway, my parents weren't members of the church when I decided to serve a mission, and so they were kind of like, "Wait, how do you know where you're going? Do you get to pick where you go?" And that's not really how it is at all. And so I wanted to share. This is a quote from a talk called "The Divine Call of a Missionary" by Elder Ronald A. Rasband from April 2010 General Conference, where he explains a little bit of that process. And it's a lengthy quote, but I felt it important to share. He said, "Each apostle holds the keys of the kingdom and exercises them at the direction and assignment of the president of the church. Elder Eyring was assigning missionaries to their fields of labor, and as part of my training, I was invited to observe. First, we knelt together in prayer. I remember Elder Eyring using very sincere words, asking the Lord to bless him to know perfectly where the missionary should be assigned. The word perfectly said much about the faith that Elder Eyring exhibited that day. As the process began, a picture of the missionary to be assigned would come up on one of the computer screens. As each picture appeared to me, it was as if the missionary were in the room with us. And Elder Eyring would then greet the missionary with this kind and endearing voice. 'Good morning, Elder Reeser or Sister Yang. How are you today?' He told me that in his own mind, he liked to think of where the missionaries would conclude their mission, and this would aid him to know where they were to be assigned. Elder Eyring would then study the comments from the bishops and stake presidents, medical notes, and other issues related to each missionary. He then referred to another screen, which displayed areas and missions across the entire world. Finally, as he was prompted by the Spirit, he would assign the missionary to his or her field of labor." And later on in that talk, Elder Rasband says, "At this time in your life," speaking to the youth, "a mission call from the Lord, my young friends, is the most important work that you can do. Prepare now, live righteously, learn from your family and church leaders, and come join with us in building the kingdom of God on earth. Accept your divine appointment in so great a cause." I love that idea of a divine appointment. But I think sometimes, especially for young men, it can kind of feel like an obligatory thing, Mason. So can you share a little bit about how you decided to serve and what experiences led to that decision?
I feel like my dad, he always shared stories about his mission ever since I was young. He served in Thailand, and so I always heard about that, and I was like, "Man, I'd love to have some experiences like that. I'd love to go through something challenging like that that will change my life." So that, I think, really helped set the mindset of I wanna go. But there was a talk in, I'm trying to remember when, but by President Nelson, and he talks about how it's like our priesthood responsibility to serve a mission, but then he goes on to say that the Lord has reserved all the young men at this time for the gathering of Israel. And so, like, that really just helped me to feel like, okay, God knows my situation. He knows that I need to be here now for whoever. So I need to go find them. So I want to go.
We listened to a farewell talk the other day, and one of the sisters shared a quote about how it's a poem. I think it's pretty well known about people coming to Earth, and one of them they get their mission call to come to Earth, right? And so they get a call to come to Earth, and one of them's going to somewhere, and they'll be born in the church, and they'll do all these things, and then the other one is being born across across the world in very different circumstances, and they have this conversation of please come find me, right? And those promises that we made in kind of an eternal nature to try and support and help one another with all those different things. But what are your thoughts on how to support those who may feel like get caught up on that obligatory side of it? Instead of just checking the box, having it be a transactional thing of like, okay, I need to serve a mission so I can check that box. You get a lot more out of it when there's a transformation that occurs as well. So what's your advice for those who are trying to balance between those different things? That idea of, okay, I'll go because I'm told I have to go and it's a transaction, to recognizing the transformation that comes. And maybe for some that transformation doesn't come until after you do the transactional and you get out there and you're in the field and you realize it. But what are your thoughts there?
There's definitely some of that where you get out there and you're like, oh, this is why I'm here. There was this one member that had been baptized like about a year ago, and like everyone was telling him like he was, I think, around 22, so still able to serve a mission. So everyone was like, "You should serve a mission. You should go. You should go. That's your priest's responsibility." And he's like, I don't know." And so he was on the fence. At one general conference, I think in 2024, October, there's a talk where he talked about this one sister who had a younger brother that was also unsure of serving, and how she read the Book of Mormon, marked passages she liked, and sent it to her younger brother and told him to read every day. And he did. And so I was like, I want to maybe try that. Maybe the Book of Mormon has some power. So I told the missionaries in that area where that member was, because I had transferred, and I was like, "Hey, tell that member, read the Book of Mormon every day." And so they did, and they helped him read it and everything, and I heard that he wanted to serve a mission after that, and so I was just like, "Oh my gosh." And so the Book of Mormon has so much power, so I think reading it every day, even if you're not really sure, like, what to read or where to read or what you should be thinking about, just at least reading it every day will bring that power into your life.
Absolutely. There was a lady that I taught on my mission, and she was just in a really difficult circumstance. She was a mom of five, and I think the oldest was 10, and they went down to a newborn. And her husband had just been deported because I serve Spanish speaking in the United States. And the ward just really jumped in to try and help and support her. And so as a missionary, I was kind of in this weird spot because I didn't necessarily want to invite her to do things and then have her say yes just because she's getting all this like logistical support from people in the congregation. And so we would just sit and read the Book of Mormon. And her kids were kind of wild. Thankfully, my companion was like 6'2" and a water polo player, so she was like in charge of like corralling the kids all the time. But we would just read the Book of Mormon. That's what we did. We didn't teach a lesson. We just read the Book of Mormon, and it was usually King Ben. We'd pick and choose what parts we read. But we'd been reading for not very long, and she said, "What do I do to join this church? Like, I know that this book is true." And it was just the Book of Mormon. That was all that we used as we taught her. And so it was really kind of cool experience for me
Wow.
to recognize the power of the Book of Mormon. Yeah, and we also taught a young man who didn't know how to read. And so we would read with him, and then on his own he would hold the Book of Mormon. He had a copy, and he would hold it to his chest to say his prayers to know if the book was true. And he had such a strong testimony too. It was really neat.
Wow. Yeah, I had a friend that we gave him a Book of Mormon, and he would carry it wherever he went. like, he'd come up to our lessons, and he's just, like, swinging it back and forth as he's walking, and we went out to a restaurant one time and he'd like wave it around and show everyone like, "Hey, look at this." And he's like, "I want to make a cover for it because I feel like it's just such a special book. I want to make it look all pretty and stuff." And so like he loved it as well. And it's just like just even holding on to it for him was just so precious to him.
Yeah, I think it was Elder Matthew Holland just gave a BYU devotional where he talked about their parents' love of the Book of Mormon and talked about that idea of reading the Book of Mormon every day. But yeah, and I think he shared a clip of his mom, Sister Holland, talking about how when she was so sick, she just wanted to be able to have her scriptures with her because it was so important to her. So let's back up a little bit and talk about what were your first impressions when you got your mission call and you read, the Japan mission, and you'll be speaking Japanese. If I remember, I think I'd heard that you'd done a little bit of studying Japanese in high school and things like that. So it wasn't a complete like blindsided type of thing.
Right. Yeah. Luckily, my mom had been smart enough when I was a freshman. I'm the oldest. And so I had no idea what classes to pick for high school. So she went in and chose Japanese. And I was like, "You're joking. Like, I don't know how to study Japanese. Like, it's the hardest language, whatever." But I ended up loving it, and I took 2 years of it, and I would have done 4, but they discontinued it. But anyway, so I had 2 years of experience at least. So I was kinda hoping, like, that'd be cool to go to Japan so I can continue learning about the culture and the language, but I know wherever I'm called, that's where God needs me. It's to a people, not a place, so I'm like, "Okay, wherever." And so then I'm reading it, and it says Tokyo, Japan, and I, like, honestly couldn't believe it at first. The rest of my family couldn't believe it either because they all knew I also wanted to go to Japan. They're like, "Don't get your hopes up." But
Yeah.
just when I read it, it was like, this is exactly where God needs me to be. Like, there's at least one person somewhere in that area that needs me to go up to them and talk to them about the gospel and share the light of Christ. And Tokyo, I guess, is where it's going to be. And I remember I talked to one of my other friends who had just gotten his call like 2 weeks ago. So still pretty fresh. And he was going to Brazil, but he came up to me once I read it and he's like, "How'd you feel?" And helped me kind of understand how I was feeling. And I was like, "Yeah, like, I feel like this is exactly where I need to be." And he's like, "Literally, me too. Like, that's exactly how I felt too. Like, it's just overwhelming. Yes, this is it." And so, just a lot of confirmation from the spirit that this is where I need to be.
Yeah, I feel like in my mind, missions are kind of like a designed roller coaster track. Like you're like, "Hey, Heavenly Father, I'm gonna get in this car, and you tell me where we're going, and you know exactly where I'll be for the next 18 months to 2 years, and you can bring people into my life that I can influence, and even more so, people who influence you and people that you learn from as well." Like, I don't know, I think about my mission, every single area I was in, I know that there was someone that I needed to know, not necessarily just for them, but also for me and what I learned from them.
Right. Yeah, because I feel like seeing someone go through so much and sacrifice so much to accept the gospel really helps me, who's been born and raised in the church where I didn't really have to sacrifice much. I was just there. Just helped to give me such an appreciation and gratitude for my situation and be able to recognize God's hand more in my life. So there's definitely that where other people helped me as much as I've helped them, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And so you get your call, you're super excited, you go to the MTC, you learn what you hope is Japanese, and then you land in Tokyo, and then maybe it's a little bit more difficult. What were those first impressions of not only the language, but also the culture is very different than it is here in the United States.
It's so different. I feel like exactly. There's a phrase in the MTC where they're like, "You'll learn one language in the MTC, and wherever you go, it'll be a completely different language." And I feel like that was true to an extent. I mean, I could recognize it was still Japanese, but they just speak it so fast, and since it's their natural tongue, they just are able to, like, skip out some syllables and stuff, so you're like, "I don't know what that word was," even maybe if you had studied it before. But they're just such a quiet and, like, "I'll mind my own business, you mind yours," like, "I'll stay out of your space," like, respectful of others and people around them. Like, I got on a train that was shoulder to shoulder at, like, 5 PM rush hour and dead silent. like completely quiet. I could hear myself breathing. I'm like, gosh, somebody say something. I can't break the silence. And so that just blew me away. Like, how can you be so quiet? But yeah, just such a loving and respectful and also quiet culture.
Yeah. What were kind of your favorite things that you learned about the culture that you're like, we should implement this when I get home?
I think the way that they just always thank each other or they're bowing or like that kind of thing. I've caught myself bowing to people several times while I've been back, and I'm like, I feel like that's just right though, because it's just showing like I appreciate you, I respect you. Like maybe you stopped at a stop sign and like let me pass or whatever. Like I would bow for that because I appreciate you and I want you to know that, and I show it through like my physical appearance. And then also just thank you. They say it all the time, and it almost becomes like a greeting because I'm like, "Holy cow, you say it all the time." And so just being grateful and I guess appreciative of those around you.
And in Japan, Christianity is not the main religion, right?
Right,
And
not at all.
so what was that like as a missionary to, I mean, not only teach people about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but teach them about Jesus Christ when they may not know very much about him at all?
I think it was really hard at first just coming from a Christian background myself and everyone around me had to 0. I'd say, like, the name Jesus Christ, and they're like, "Who?" And I'm like, "What?" There
Yeah.
was even this one time I stopped this guy that had a cross necklace on, and I'm like, "Perfect, he's gotta know." So I stop him like, "Hey, like, I see you have a cross necklace, that's pretty cool. What meaning does it have to you?" And he's like, "Nothing really, I just thought it looked cool." And I was shocked. I was like, "You're kidding me." And so it was difficult at first trying to figure out how to even approach them without having a background, but it just came from that love side of things. You build a relationship first and show them who Jesus Christ is through your countenance, your actions, and your words. And then you can be like, we're trying to become like Jesus Christ. And so, like, being kind to others or being patient or forgiving others, like, that's who Jesus Christ was. And so, I think through that way, you had to almost show them who he was instead of talking about it.
That makes sense. And they understand that universal connection of like Christ-like service and kindness for each other. And I think kind of that idea of like building a relationship of trust. If you go and you talk to them about something they're interested in, they are bound to ask you, "Hey, white boy, what are you doing here in Tokyo and why do you speak such good Japanese?" Right?
Right. Yes, and that's what we tried to tell all the missionaries is you say anything. They have a Dodgers hat, and if even if you've seen a baseball before, just talk about it and be like, "Hey, I like your hat. Do you like baseball? Who's your favorite player?" They almost always said Otani, but
Yeah.
um like it's at least somewhere to start. And then they're like, "Right. How do you speak Japanese? Why are you here? You're like 18 years old. You should be in college. Like, what are you doing?" Like they're just curious. And so then you're like, "Okay, I'll share."
So you went right after high school, right? Or did you go do some school first?
Right. So I had applied or put in my papers in July and got my call at the beginning of August, but it said I'd head into the MTC January 1st. So it was 5 months and I'd already missed the cutoff for school. So I just had to work for that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. So for those who may be wondering, is it I think the answer is it depends on you to go right after high school or to wait for another, do some schooling first and then go. In your mind, what are the pros and cons of either side of that?
I'd kind of relate it to a patriarchal blessing, like knowing when to get that. Like you'll just feel and you kind of know, like, I need to go now. And that's how I kind of felt. But I think the pros to going to school first is you kind of get a feel of living away from family and like buying groceries and like all these little things that you don't really have to do while living at home that you'll have to do on your mission. So that kind of helps with that transition of kind of being out on your own away from family. But the pros for going right out of high school is like you just get right into it and you learn all these life skills and how to make friends really quickly and how to talk to people and communication skills and how to cook because you have to. And so
Yeah.
then once you go into college, you already have those skills, so then college becomes easier. So it's kind of like Yeah, either way.
Yeah. So, speaking of, living at home and family, like what did your family do to help prepare you and support you? You talked a little bit about your dad. You're the oldest. I know you've got a sister who just got her mission called not too long ago. Super exciting that you guys get to at least kind of cross
Yeah.
paths for a brief moment before she leaves. But and did you feel pressure as the oldest to be like, "Oh, I'm the oldest. I need to be an example for my younger siblings."
I've always been told I need to be the example for my siblings, like, my whole life, so that definitely played a role, I'm sure. But I think just, like, my mom really helped me to kinda talk it out and be like, "Well, when do you wanna go?" 'Cause I honestly didn't know. I knew I was going to, for sure, I just didn't know exactly when. And so she kinda helped, like, talk to me and help understand where my head was at. And then my dad also, he's like, "What's holding you from going right now?" And I thought for a sec, and I was like, "I guess nothing." And he's like, "Well, what are we doing then? Let's sign you up." And so I just kinda went for it, and it worked. And so I think just them helping me talk through it and figure out what is holding me back. If there was a valid reason, I maybe would have waited, but I honestly was like, I was just ready and that was my time, so I just went.
And I've always thought your family is just like full of joy and happiness and like so what are some of those like things that you guys do like I don't know whether it's traditions or what you guys just always are so quick to laugh and smile and share goodness with people around you. What is it that has kind of been the root of those experiences within your family life?
I think going to church every week has definitely helped, and also doing, like, wholesome family activities together. Like, we're always trying to do things where, like, eat dinner together at the dinner table and be able to talk and see how each other's day was going, or I guess, like, me and my next oldest sister, we'd drive to high school together, and so I was able to build that relationship there, and then I have a younger brother, and he's my brother, so I love my brother, and so I'd create a relationship there, and I guess just always trying to figure out how can I serve my parents or my siblings? How can I build a relationship with them? And then the spiritual side of things, like going to church every week and getting the sacrament and getting that spiritual power to be able to have love in your home, then you can share that love instead of having no love at home. And then it's harder to share anything because you don't have anything.
So for your family, what differences or blessings did you see in them while you were gone? Obviously, there were some height changes when you got off the plane. Everybody was
Right.
quite a bit taller, but what else did you see?
There were 3 major car crashes while I was gone, and we hadn't had a car crash before, and that scared me at first, but then they walked away with, like, no injuries, and, like, all the cars were totaled, so it wasn't, like, minor damage, it's, like, heavy damage, and so just safety, first of all. I
Yeah.
think the other one is that really surprised me is when I came home, I would see my younger siblings just reading the Book of Mormon or reading the scriptures just, like, in their room on their own and, like, saying their personal prayer before, and, like they didn't really do that before because I didn't really do it before. I maybe read the Book of Mormon, like, once a week if I was lucky, and most of the time I was at church, and so it wasn't much on my own, and so to see them go from a similar thing to just doing that without me really telling them to do that or anything, like, blew my mind.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's so cool when kids or siblings decide to do things on their own, right? They use their agency to say, "Okay, I'm going to set aside time for God today by doing these things." And that can be a tough thing to learn, especially, when life is so busy in middle school and high school and all those different times. But so how about you? How did you change over 2 years? What were the biggest changes you saw in yourself?
I feel like everything, which is crazy because yeah, I mean, all of the Christ-like attributes, I feel like I really learned how to build those and then how to keep them. Patience, especially with my family. I was not very patient before. We still got along, but, like, I had a quick fuse. But now I feel like I'm just able to forgive a lot easier and quicker, and there's just a lot more charity. Um, and then I feel like, just shyness, I used to be really shy. I wouldn't really talk to new people unless they kind of initiated, and then I'd kind of get along and if they had similar interests, and I'm like, okay, this can work. But I was never like a go getter or like, hey, my name is Mason. Who are you? And what's your life? Like, that was very foreign to me. And that's all you did on your mission for 2 years is you have to do that. And so I learned to love it and learned to love people and like their lives are just so interesting. Like every single person has such a different background and history and experiences that you can learn from. And so now I feel like I'm very outgoing, or I try to be a lot more because I'm like, I know that you have some interesting story in your life and I'd love to hear it. And so I feel like that was another big change. I feel like though, a lot of people mistake missions like that the idea that a mission will change someone. That's not true because I saw quite a few missionaries, they went out maybe with that expectation and then they went home pretty much the same person. So I know that that's not true. And while I was on my mission, I heard a parable where it's like there's you and you have this little mess of clay in your hands. And then there's this master clay maker that is able to make stuff, master potter. And you can either give your clay to him, trusting him that he'll make something amazing out of it, or you can keep it and be like, oh, I don't really want it to change. Like, this is pretty awesome. It's my clay. But if you give it to him, he can make it into a beautiful vase, whereas you have no idea how to do that. So it'd stay that little mess of clay. And so just picturing that clay as like your will and um like just your trust in God that he can make your heart and your personality and just who you are better than you can possibly imagine. And so just putting that trust in God and being willing to change will change you.
Yeah, that idea of transaction versus transformation, right? Of being willing to allow that transformation to occur, and not clinging so much to our own ideals of who we think we should become, and thinking that we've got a good plan, because usually our plan is not usually what Heavenly Father has in mind, but His is so much better. Even though sometimes the path is a little bit more complicated, but it allows us to rely on Him, right?
Right.
One of the other things you talked about in your emails was you talked about your approach to General Conference and how that kind of shifted while you're on your mission. Can you share a little briefly about what General Conference is, in case there's listeners who are unsure what it is, as well as how that approach has changed for you? Since I think this will come out right around General Conference time as people are preparing.
Okay, yeah. So, general conference, to put it simply, is we listen to our church leaders who we believe are spokespeople for God. And there's like a scripture that we believe in that's like, whether it be my own voice or the voice of my servants, it is the same. And so we get to hear what God has to say to us every 6 months. And so my approach to that and trying to hear what God has to say to me specifically, I think of questions that I would like to be answered in my life, whether that's personal or for someone else. Like maybe my family is struggling and I don't know how to help them, or maybe I don't know how to have patience with someone I don't really get along with that I'm forced to live with for the next 6 weeks as a missionary. So I'd go with those questions and I'd write them down. So then I show God, I've written them down, I'm ready, and I'm taking them to General Conference to get that answer. So then while I'm watching, I have that question constantly in the front of my mind of, okay, how do I be more patient? How do I be more patient? And every single time, no matter what question it is, no matter how random or like doubtful I am that I'll get the answer, it's always there. And I don't know how. It's almost like magic, but I'm like writing all these things and I have a notebook full of answers for just that one question, let alone the three that I go into it with or however many. And so I know questions are a huge help and that helps with scripture study as well. Like that same principle applies to the temple or scriptures or church or general conference, but that's how I've learned how to prepare better.
I love the idea of writing it down. We do that sometimes. And other times you're like, oh, yeah, I've got a question in my mind. But I think
Right.
writing it down is key, right? Very cool. So, also on your mission, I wanted to ask you, what did you learn about the atonement of Jesus Christ that you didn't know before as you taught about him and shared his life with so many people and helped them to draw closer to Christ is such a cool experience. And what did you learn about his atonement through that experience?
I think for me personally, when I first, like, went into the MTC and heard all these missionaries' testimonies, they're like, "I have a testimony of the atonement of Jesus Christ, and he's helped me from A, B, C, and D." And I'm like, "I don't feel like I've really had an experience that's so explicitly like, I know that was the atonement of Jesus Christ." So I kind of, like, I was kinda troubled in my spirit. I'm like, "Gosh, like, do I not have a testimony of that? Like, I believe in Jesus Christ, and I believe that the atonement happened, but did it affect me personally? Like, I don't really see that yet." But I had this one companion, and he was asking me, he's like, "How do you always manage to be so positive all the time? Like, I feel like I just beat myself up, and I just can't shake it. I just can't get out of that mindset. So how do you do that?" And I was very similar to him. I used to be very hard on myself, and it was hard for me to find joy as well because of that. And I remember, like, my dad finally, he, like, came up to me and he's like, "I've noticed there's something going on with you, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if you really know either, but, like, help me figure this out." And so we kinda talked, and I shared my feelings, and he's like, "Well, you know the 2 great commandments?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "The one is, thou shalt love the Lord thy God, and thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." And I was like, "Hmm," and he's like, "It says as thyself, that should be equal. You and other people, your love should be the same." And he's like, "You have a genuine love for other people, that's just natural, but the love for yourself is way lower, and so that's breaking that commandment." And I was like, "What? I'm breaking a commandment? Like, that's crazy." Like, I just never realized the weight of that situation, and so then I was like, "Okay." So then as I testified to my companion about that, it surprised me because I testified that the atonement of Jesus Christ gave me the power to change my mindset and the way I think about myself and the way that I just think in general. And I think that was the biggest thing is the enabling power of Jesus Christ and that it's power. Like you see in Marvel movies where they have all this magic power and we're like, okay, yeah, that's power. But then we hear the power of Jesus Christ. We're like, oh yeah, it's just like Jesus, whatever. But no, it's just as real, and it changed my mindset and the way I think and the way I see myself and the way I view others, like, everything. That wasn't just from my willpower, it was from another unseen force, which was from trusting in Jesus Christ and accessing that power. So I think just how to access that enabling power and just recognizing it was the biggest thing for me.
Thinking about that, I love that your companion asked you that question. So it allowed you to testify to him about it and kind of strengthen your own reflection and testimony of that same idea. This past summer, our family did a church history tour and we started in Niagara Falls. And when we're in Niagara Falls, we went to see the falls and do all these different things. And the tour guide said, "Hey, just I want you to remember two words about Niagara Falls. I want you to remember power and majesty." And then a couple days later, we'd gone over to Palmyra and been to all these different church sites and things. And then we went to the priesthood restoration site. And while we were there, the tour guide had my two boys, who at the time were a teacher and a deacon, and had them come up. And he said, Niagara Falls, what were the two words? And they said, power and majesty. He said, Niagara Falls was created by the power of the priesthood, which means that these young men and the power of God on the earth contains all of that power and majesty. And we're able to receive the blessings of that due to the restoration of the priesthood that took place in that location. But it was so cool to think about it from that perspective of the power of the priesthood and how that's tied in with the enabling power of Jesus Christ. Yeah. I've got one last question for you. It's always the final question. So, one of the purposes of Pebbles of Light is to celebrate those relationships that have helped to brighten our path and in turn light the path of others. So, could you share about one or two people who've placed a pebble of light in your path when you needed it most and how that helped to change your path?
There was this one man that was on my mission. He wasn't a member quite yet, that he had seen, um in Japan this past year for Christmas, they got the giving machine in Tokyo. First time it was been in Japan. And this man like sees it and he's like, I don't know why, but I need to go and visit that church. So he goes up to one of the volunteers there and she sets up a time for him to go to the temple and to do like there's an annex right next by for a visitor center, and it has all the rooms of the temple, and he can do a tour there with missionaries. And so we got his number and we met with him, and like just his natural and genuine light, like it blew me away. I'm like, how do you have this much already? Like I know it'll grow from here as you learn more, but how do you just have this much? And it was my last like 6 weeks of my mission. And so like we've been working really hard and we are so busy with everything because we're in like a leadership position in the mission. And so there's just all these things we had to worry about within the mission, let alone our own teaching area with friends. And so it was kind of stressful and high pressure to find friends, to be the example, all the things. And so we find someone like him who's just like, he's ready. Like, we didn't have to do anything. Like, God had been preparing this man for who knows how long and was like, you need this guy to teach. Like, you need to teach this guy, not just because he needs it and is ready, but because you're in a tough spot and you need some alleviated pressure. And so just seeing the light in his eyes and being able to teach him and how receptive he was to the spirit just really helped me to be like, wow, like this is real and God is so thoughtful of me and my situation and of him and preparing him and leading him to us to where he needs to be. But um that definitely helped me to like, I guess, realign my will with God and be like, okay, 100% trust. Like, yes, I know you're there again. Like, I just have to get that confirmation over and over and over because we all do. And so that was just a more recent one that really helped. That was a pebble of light in my life.
Awesome. I think, yeah, we do need that revisit of that knowledge of, okay, oh yeah, you are there. I'm sorry I forgot, but thanks for the reminder,
Right.
just to guide us along. Awesome. Thanks, Mason, so much for being here and being willing to come and share a little bit about your mission.
Yeah, thank you.
As we close today's conversation, Mason reminds us that transformation begins the moment we trust God enough to place our imperfect clay in his hands. This episode's pebble is to spend a few quiet minutes each day reading something that draws you closer to Christ, and notice what changes. Be sure to check the show notes for links to the quotes that we shared. Thanks so much for being here and continuing to share light wherever you go. Thank you for tuning in. My hope is that something helped you feel seen, encouraged, or inspired to bring light to someone else. If a name or moment stood out, don't let it pass. Reach out, express gratitude, or take that next step. You can connect with me anytime on socials at Pebbles of Light or at ammaxon.com. If this episode was meaningful for you, please follow the show, rate or review, and share it with someone who might need a lift today. And if you want to go a step farther, you can support the show on Patreon. See you next time.